Welcome to the Unsexy Entrepreneurship Podcast. Everything you need to know for millennials looking to start, acquire, or grow a business with CPA and entrepreneur Charles Harris and director of the Entrepreneurship Institute, Dr. Seth Jenson. This is the Unsexy Entrepreneurship Podcast.
Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the Unsexy Entrepreneurship Podcast. I am your host, Charles Harris, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Seth Jenson. We are so excited for you to join us today. We're going to go through market sizing and kind of what that entails. And we've got a fun treat. We're actually going to do live market sizing with you for a company we haven't market sized yet. So you can kind of see our process and how we'd go about doing this. But first, let's talk about how to even go through market sizings.
I know. I love that you're like, what a treat, market sizing. And hopefully for our consumers of this podcast, it is. But I think this is
I'm
maybe
so excited about today.
One of the few contexts where people are like, oh yeah, like bring out the nice china. We're market sizing. So what is market sizing? Market sizing is just saying, okay, we're about to build a business. We want to make sure this business makes good money. So how much demand is there, right? Like how big is the market opportunity here for this particular business that we're building? I'll be honest, this is kind of an abstract process. We're going to try to go from very abstract to slightly less abstract, but this is really for you to think through the assumptions of your business more than anything, as opposed to give you like real clear, hard data that you're going to like immediately start, doing something with. So for example, when you're looking for venture capital, markets, there's always a market sizing slide in any pitch deck saying, hey, this is like a $5 billion opportunity and, blue ocean and all these different things. And even the investors know, and even entrepreneurs kind of spewing this nonsense know that this is really like wild guesswork for the most part. Because the reality is if you're doing something new or different, it's unclear exactly how big your market is going to be. It's unclear what your customers are going to see as substitutes for your product or not, and exactly who you're competing with. And so just kind of take this all with a huge grain of salt. And yet it's super important because you don't want to be chasing after an opportunity that is smaller than your goals. So that's why this is really important. But yeah, at its simplest, it's trying to come up with an estimate number for how much money is there to be made pursuing this particular opportunity. So, and in fact, Charlie, like in your context, I'm curious, like, did you do any market sizing or calculations about kind of your local context?
Absolutely. Luckily for me, I can work anywhere in the country. I'm not going to do taxes for outside a country, and I don't do international taxes. So if you have a bank account over in the UK, like don't come talk to me. I'm not your ideal tax accountant. But I did look up how many small businesses are in the United States, because that's a key. There are tons of CPA firms. And so thinking through that, and is there still enough of a market? Like, can I actually break in? Realizing that there are over 1 million small businesses. I don't know of 200,000 accounting firms. And new small businesses start every single day. And so it made it super easy to say, okay, there's going to be enough new businesses that start this year, and they're not going to know an accountant because I don't know the competitors, and they're not going to go to PwC, EY, or KPMG because they're too expensive for a small startup or a small business. So it was pretty easy to determine, from my perspective at least, like there's enough of a market.
Yeah.
And even more in depth, I have several niches that I work on. Specifically, I work on most businesses. I have businesses across the board, but I have 2 niches that I really have focused on over the last year, I guess. And one was music schools. And I looked up and there aren't that many. There may be 10,000, but it's really hard to guess because a lot of them are in-house and there really isn't very good data on that. And so that was a little bit of a gamble. I think I'm probably, if you're a music school, I'm probably the accountant in the space already. It didn't take very long.
Not a lot of competition. Yep. So small market's fine if you're the big dog in the market. Yep.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like if you look up music school taxes or something like that, I'm going to be the name that pops up. It's not, you might get some other names from bigger companies that are more productized, like Bench would always beat me in SEO, which makes perfect sense. Bench was like a productized bookkeeping service. They shut down because they weren't making money, but they made sure to put every single type of company into their listing and then push the SEO on that, right? So they went out on most of these small like weird niches. But outside of them, I'm going to be your first option, which is really cool. It's really easy. And for me, it makes me a good chunk of change every year to do a bunch of music school tax returns. And I love it. And I love the audience. So I have no issues with it. The other niche that I work pretty heavily in is law firms, and that there are other accountants that service them. And so before I niche down into law firms as well, I did do market research on that because I realized, hey, there are already several. I can name 5 other firms that focus on them. What I quickly realized is that there's still plenty.
I mean, there are so many law firms, right, in the U.S.
Well,
right?
and that's the thing, right?
In any specific context, right? Because we talk a lot about not just a big customer base, but one that you have access to as well. And you know that even if you had to go, Main Street, walk and knock on people's doors, you'll trip over law firms throughout the DFW area, right? And so like that's comforting too as you're going through this market sizing process where it's like not only are there a lot of law firms, but there are some that I can reach very easily and even go see in person and develop relationships with, which is good to know, right?
Well, and that was the big thing for me too, right? I need, let's say 20 to 40 clients. So could I get 20 to 40 clients in that space?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. That would be less than 0.1% of the total group. And so there's definitely a market. There's definitely a possibility. And so both of those I felt really comfortable with, and it was really easy. I would be curious, Seth, on how you determine something that isn't so ubiquitously needed. How do you determine the market size on that?
So, and this is really a creative process, and we're not going to, there's lots of levels of detail you could do with this, right? Like you can get very technical and very fine grained. And in most situations, you don't really need to, right? This is for most people, a high level exercise is going to be where a lot of their traction comes from. But yeah, let's do an example and kind of demonstrate that process. And so you had an example coming from a high school student that you've been mentoring.
Yeah, super fun. She wants to be a florist, right? She wants to decorate. Her mindset, I don't know if you're familiar with Texas for those listening, but there's something called mums, which are these giant floral arrangements.
Oh man, mums.
People spend hundreds of dollars on them. They're ridiculous.
It's one of those weird things that, as far as I know, basically only happens in Texas. Like it's a really weird tradition. But yeah, for major dances, I guess specifically homecoming, people spend hundreds, even thousands of dollars on these hideous, and we're talking just like ugly, terrible, ruin your dress or suit monstrosities of fake flowers and clanging bells and ribbons. Like Google pictures of Texas mums and it will blow your mind. It's the weirdest tradition ever.
So what was interesting is, as she was talking about this, I was like, this is great. It's a great business for 1 month of the year. No one cares about homecoming mums outside of mum season.
September,
or homecoming,
October,
right?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. It's a pretty short window. And so how do you make consistent money throughout a period of time? And so we were talking about this, and she really wants to work with flowers. That's her real big passion. She wants to grow flowers herself. And obviously we talked about, hey, they're not always in season. You're going to have to order some from flower shops and things like that. And that's a whole conversation. But really we were trying to come up with a way of getting consistent money. And so we had both heard about this gal who decorates pumpkins on the front porch.
Wildly successful.
Wildly successful. Area. Absolutely crazy. And so I had been thinking about this. I had heard about it recently. And so I was talking to this young woman, and I brought up, what if you did a subscription service to decorate a front porch? So the benefits of this is you're going to be doing it year round. They're going to pay monthly for decoration, right? You can do a nice, beautiful wreath with a lot of flowers and then do the wreath according to the season. You could do other things as well. You could decorate banister for extra fee, right? Your minimum could just be the wreath, and then you could go above and beyond, right? So during Halloween season, you could copy what this woman does and use pumpkins. During Christmas, you could add poinsettias, right? Like there are all these things that we can do. And so I talked to her about how we could do this. So the question isn't, I think it's a doable business, but how do we market size that? That's the question that we're going to talk about today.
So, and again, you'll see very quickly that this is more of a creative process than a scientific one. But the first question that I just want to bring up is, and you know, you may not have talked about this with your mentee, but sometimes it makes sense to just go straight to the entrepreneur's goals, right? So if this young aspiring woman wants to build a nationwide brand, then we're going to try to market size a nationwide opportunity. And it's funny, your pumpkin example is a of that entrepreneur in Dallas is a good one because she recently just expanded to a nationwide brand. She's kind of almost franchising her model at this point, kind of seeding her brand around. And so she went from kind of a local thing to a big thing, and that's often the case. But for kicks and giggles, let's think about the total American addressable market here. So if she was going to have a big, full national brand, and so obviously it's nice. We can kind of think through the logic of this pretty quickly, right? So we know that she's focusing probably mostly on affluent single family homes is going to be her bread and butter. And she might choose to exclusively focus on that for simplicity and marketing purposes. So we can do a quick Google search here and ask how many homes are there in the United States of America over, let's just say $1 million. Let's say we're only going to focus on people with $1 million homes or more. They're the type of people that want to spend a lot of money on fresh flowers or handcrafted art. Quick Google search tells us that's over 8 million homes in the US alone.
Good market size.
Yeah. So if she's going to go, only cater to single family homes in the US, she's got 8 million to work with. So then that gives us a number for if she was to sell to everyone that could possibly be a customer, she's got 8 million to work with. And then the question is, well, what's her annual subscription? So what do you think? What are people going to pay a month for this? Or is it quarterly?
Great question. We didn't talk about that. I would probably try and push monthly, but it could potentially be quarterly, right? There could be different tiers, like just the wreath or the full porch decoration. You could say quarterly, so you just get Halloween, Christmas, I don't know, Valentine's Day and something in the summer.
So I think we could probably say, if this is going to be a year-round thing and it's fresh and it's custom, maybe we say it's $3,000. So it's less than $1,000 a quarter
a year.
For a year, because we know from the experience of the pumpkin lady and DFW that you can charge $1,000 for these services to this particular kind of affluent client base, right? So,
and that would be $250 a month, which I think could provide you with a nice, beautiful
that's a flower arrangement. Like a nice big flower arrangement can easily cost you $250, right? So that seems pretty reasonable. So right now we've got 8 million potential customers. We've got $3,000 she could make a year. And the total addressable market is just those two numbers multiplied by each other. If all 8 million households over $1 million spent $3,000 on a product, that's pretty easy. That's a lot of zeros. I'll let the accountant add all those. It's 24 something. How many zeros are we talking about here?
8 million, is that right?
8 million times $3,000.
So we're looking at 24 billion
a
year. So
that's saying that now, does that number mean anything to this young woman? No, this is the total addressable market. So this is assuming, Apple's a total addressable market are all of the high-end smartphones in the world, right? Now, we know Apple only has, admittedly a big chunk of that market. In fact, let's find out how much. So what's the total addressable market for smartphones? And again, this is a common thing. I bet Google can just tell us. There's been reports of 500 billion in smartphone sales. And I think that
seems about right. There are 300 million people in the United States. And then a smartphone is $1,000, let's say. So that would be 300 billion.
So that's the total addressable market. Yeah. But now we can say, hey, what's Apple's smartphone market share? So in the premium segment, they've got about 61% in the US and 75% globally, right? So there's that big number, that hundreds of billions number, and Google is the dominant picture, but it's still only 60% of that big hundreds of billions number, right? And so for this young entrepreneur, the big opportunity is 24 billion, right? That's what we said?
Right. Yep. 24 billion.
So that's the big, if she had everyone but she's only going to get a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. And that's okay because that's a huge number.
Honestly, if you get 1 million, that's less than
Yeah.
1%, right? I'd have to do the math because I can't do math in my head, but that's a really, really small percent.
Definitely. So let's actually bring this a little bit more tractable for her. Maybe she's like, I don't want to deal with a national brand. I just want to be local. Let's do the DFW area. So let's say how many,
at least starting out, that makes sense, right? She's not going to be able to sell to Des Moines, Iowa very well.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there are wreath mailing subscriptions too. So that is a competition there that she can look up.
So it says that, so this is interesting. There's 12,000 luxury $1 million or more homes sold in Texas, and Dallas is one of the bigger areas. So I think it's reasonable to say that a third of those were in Dallas. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Maybe we'll say a quarter just to be extra safe. So let's assume there's 3,000 homes in DFW over 1 million. So now it's 3,000 times 3,000. Math, how many zeros do we got there? 6 zeros now?
Just 9 million.
Yep. So that's a $9 million opportunity, which is super awesome. So that's her total addressable market if she's just going to focus on the DFW area and she's only going to focus on $1 million or more homes, which is honestly kind of helpful for her for a marketing strategy because she can look at the neighborhoods that qualifies for and really focus in on there. She can send her
and
Instagram.
We've talked about it before with channels and everything like that. You're not going to find $1 million home every mile. You're going to find them all clustered together, right? Exactly. And so it makes it easy to figure out where they are.
And honestly, Meta and other ad platforms are pretty good at geolocating or income bracketing and things. So she could probably actually have even online targeted ads very specific to her niche. And it's the type of thing that would probably sell quite well in a video Instagram format, reels and things like that. So now she's got a $9 million market. This is helpful because that's a lot of money for a high school student.
Mm-hmm.
But then the question becomes, well, what is she going to go after in the short term? And that's something called the serviceable, obtainable market. So what's obtainable for her and that she can actually service. So the total addressable market is just this big back of the napkin figure of the big opportunity if she was able to be the dictator of the world and make everyone buy her product in her customer segment. The serviceable, obtainable market is what she thinks she can realistically do. And sometimes at this point, if you're a tech firm, you'll just choose kind of an arbitrary number. You'll be like 5%. We think with a bunch of advertising, we're like this competitor. This competitor currently owns 5%, and we think we can steal 5% market share from these other competitors because we're better than them. Sometimes at this point, you'll literally just slap a percentage on, or you can build the logic from the ground up and say, okay, if I want to work on this full time and I'm, basically you start with your constraints and say, I'm willing to hire, 10 of my friends and it takes 5 hours to design these per client. And anyways, she can kind of see what her limitations are and kind of build up. So maybe she realizes with the amount of people she's willing to hire, the amount of time it takes to service a client, she's like, I can do 100 of these really at scale with my current constraints. I'm a high school student. I don't have time to do more than that.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes, that's the obtainable market that's serviceable. It's a tiny, tiny fraction. But then that becomes 100 times 3,000, right? Which is still fantastic for your average high school student in terms of revenue numbers. And her margins are going to be just killer. So she's netting, $300,000 top line revenue at this point. And she can probably take home half of that easy in terms of the margins for a business like this.
Well, and I know this isn't what we're talking about, but this gets me excited for what I do, right? I love doing not only figuring out the market, but then figuring out, okay, how much are we going to earn from this? Is it possible to make a living? What do we need to make a living?
Uh-huh.
So I typed into ChatGPT, how many homes are above 750,000 in the DFW area. And this helps us a lot too. And this is why you use ChatGPT. This is why you use Google, because doing multiple things helps. It says almost $5,000 million homes in DFW. So I don't know how those compare to because it said, 8,000 in Texas?
Yeah, 12,000 in Texas total.
12,000 in Texas. Okay. So almost half are in DFW, which is great. And then obviously that's not 750 and above. I figured 750, they're going to have the spending money for $3,000 because $3,000 is a pretty small amount for if you're making that much money.
Especially in Texas, where home values aren't as inflated as New York or California, right? You can't find a home in California under 750, but in Texas, if you're spending $750,000, it's a nice home.
It's a nice home, but that they don't have numbers on above 750, but it's more than 5,000. Then, how much money? Let's say her costs are 50% of the 3,000. I think, give or take, it might be less than that. So how many does she need to sell in order to be comfortable? It would be roughly about 80, and 80 out of 5,000, it's more than 5,000, is going to be less than, well, I should do the math before I say something wrong because people will judge me on here. So 80 of 5,000 would be 1.6%. And like I said, that's basically just $1 million home plus. So if you're doing 750 or even 500, which is still a nice home in Texas, you're really looking at probably less than 1% of market saturation in order to make a really good living. Like 6 figures plus is hard to complain about.
And what I love about this example we're giving, we were just talking about this before we were recording, but I love those businesses where you can see the break even point or the short-term goal is accessible and kind of things that don't scale, kind of that man to man. And so if she only needs 80 homes to be comfortable, you can literally knock on doors till you get 80 customers, right? Like,
especially in her situation, right? She's a young woman trying to be an entrepreneur. You knock on those doors, you're going to get stay-at-home moms who are like, yes, I want to support you and your business. This is awesome.
Yeah,
that's all I have to spend. She's got a business right there.
That's nice because it kind of, again, as she grows, she's going to want to master online marketing. She's going to want to come up with, processes and strategies and diversify in multiple channels. But it's beautiful when you have a path to that serviceable, obtainable market. And you're just like, you know what? This isn't rocket science. I can just kind of, just talk to people till it works, right? Just kind of be my own sales team and make it happen. Or I can hire some, snot-nosed college kid to go knock on doors and sell for me. Or I can make a free Instagram account and, I only need a little bit of traction for it to bring in, So that's the power of this process, is helping you think through the reality of your business. And it starts abstract. This total addressable market is just helping you be like, is there money to be made here? That's really the question you're answering. And then bringing it down to that serviceable, obtainable market, that market that you really think at scale you can accomplish. And then even closer, where am I going to get my first few customers? Like, what's the path to that serviceable, obtainable market? And do I like what I'm seeing? And for this young entrepreneur and this idea you discussed, I love what I'm seeing. This is a great business. High totally margin doable. And low risk for her, right? Because she's only buying materials after she's landed the clients. Very low cost of customer acquisition. So this is a low risk experiment to try. Who knows whether it works, but it's certainly a low risk experiment to try with the potential of a huge market, obviously. And that's what we've learned from this kind of market sizing experience.
Well, and I want to bring up one more thing too. And this is kind of tangential to market sizing, but I see this a lot in startup businesses, is like a pumpkin decorating your front porch business. It doesn't seem scalable. It seems very small business. And so people immediately think, oh, it's not worth doing. Because they don't see the billions that come from an Amazon. But we clearly ran through the numbers just now. Like, it is completely doable to make a great business off of very few people, off of a very niche service. And then just like our DFW friend, well, I shouldn't call her my friend because I don't know her, but our DFW person, right, that we've been talking about, she makes bukus of money and she's expanding nationwide now. Whereas before she was just local. So I think sometimes we limit our thinking because we think, the market isn't 500 billion like an Apple. And it just doesn't need to be. And I think the second we kind of break that idea of thinking we're so limited by the market being 200,000 people, what are we doing? Like, that is a huge market and that is awesome.
Yes.
And as long as you're giving a good service, market sizing definitely checks out.
Again, using you as an example, 40 clients a year is making a killing living for you, right? Like you were doing
Yeah.
just fine with just 40 clients, right? And so that's literally 2 clients a year for a few years and you're there, right? That's enough growth for you to hit this incredible
Yeah.
amount of scale. And there's tens of thousands of potential companies within a few miles of you. Just personally, for my consulting business, again, high margin, high ticket item, I'm thrilled with a dozen clients a year. Like if I just get one a month, I'm doing just fine, right? And so, and again, you and I both have high ticket items, which is important to realize. But it shows, again, just to reemphasize your point, you don't have to be huge. You don't have to be sexy. You don't have to be a nationwide brand. Some of the richest people I know run businesses you have never heard of, and they are things that you've never considered before, like digging swimming pools or,
Yeah.
like repaving driveways or just like things that we all recognize, like, yeah, I guess we need that. There's a lot of that happening, but incredibly successful companies. The other thing I love about this example we've given for this young high schooler considering a very simple business, decorating porches and doors, it's kind of an out there business. It doesn't fit the categories of business we think of on a daily basis. And for that reason, people might discredit it. They might be like, oh, like, it doesn't exist. And so it probably isn't going to work or whatever. And yet we pursue things like restaurants, which are very low scale, very low margin, high capital intensive. And we accept those as
risky.
Incredibly, one of the worst fail rates of any business. We accept that. We're like, oh yeah, starting a restaurant, that's normal, like the good business model. And we give that 2 thumbs up kind of unquestioningly. And so I encourage our listeners to think critically about business models and not just go down the beaten paths necessarily. Go look for these unsexy opportunities because you don't need a huge amount of scale to be successful. It doesn't need to be flashy or a beaten path. If the numbers work, the numbers work, and you can build incredible lives.
And from our conversation too, this business model makes a lot of sense because worst case, she graduates and works a job and does this on the side, right? There is little to no risk, no upfront costs, no risks. If suddenly she loses all her customers, she's down to one wreath. It's still worth it for her to do once a month. And
I know, yeah, it's valuable even at a scale of 1, right? If she has one customer, that extra $1,500 isn't, gonna turn her off of her business, right? So,
right.
You're absolutely right. And there's opportunities like this in everyone's life. You just got to be willing to look for them, or let Google tell you them, right? Like let ChatGPT just suggest a bunch of ideas like this for you. You don't even have to be creative. You just got to be willing to take the plunge and get out there and try it, which I love.
So, well, thank you everyone for listening to the Unsexy Entrepreneurship Podcast. I hope you're inspired and you had some fun today. And we'll be back next week. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for listening to the Unsexy Entrepreneurship Podcast. Seth and I want to continually improve and make sure that we're covering the topics that you as an entrepreneur really want help with, but we need your help with that, and here's how. So first, please like and subscribe to the show wherever you're getting your podcast. We want this to get into as many hands of entrepreneurs as possible. It could really help make their business a success. Secondly, leave us a review on your podcast app. We read each and every single one of those comments, and it really helps us in our planning to make this tailored for you as an entrepreneur. And lastly, send us your questions directly. Just click the link in the episode description and you'll be able to contact us directly, as well as get notified of upcoming shows and value-added content. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we'll be back next week. Thank you.